Good day. My name is Alain Hoodashtian, and I'm teaching at Swiss UMF University in Geneva. And today I'm going to talk about globalization. First, I'll give you some historical aspects of globalization, and then I'll talk about some theories. And at the end, I will talk about the fact that coronavirus has changed the world, and it has some important impacts in terms of economic world. Everybody knows what is globalization, more or less, in this room, I believe. And we know that at the beginning, if you want to go back to the end of Second World War, United States has been trying to help Europe for a reconstruction of its economy. The economy of Europe has been demolished after the war, and Germany and United Kingdom and France and other countries like Poland needed money. And Marshall Plan was to put $17 billion to Europeans in order to restart the economy. And after a few years, maybe 10 years, Berlin again became a great city. This means the economy was running again, and United States didn't want to give money and run away. United States has been, in fact, trying to establish a commercial and trade with Europe to take the maximum benefits, naturally. So the first was this development of trade or international trade between the United States and Europe. And years after years, especially coming to 16th and 17th, the world has changed. Basically, Japan became a very advanced country. And in fact, the 70s, we talk about internationalization of capitalism, which is a new phenomenon. This is a kind of acceleration of this international trade. So, what happened in 70s? In 60s and 70s, there was a theoretician, a French theoretician, talking about third world theory. Third world theory is emphasizing the fact that basically there are some southern countries and northern countries. Southern countries are underdeveloped, and northern countries are very developed, like European countries, North American countries, including United States and Canada. And also the exceptional part of this game is Japan, which has been starting to develop. And that was a part of the club of the North. So South was underdeveloped in 60s and 70s, and everybody in political economy, political science, was talking about third world theory. From 70s, because of this internationalization of capitalism, these countries, including India and China, including some countries in North of Africa, including South Africa, and some countries in Latin America, has started to develop. But at the end of 80s, two important political events had happened. Let me show you. What happened is that Ronald Reagan became the president of the United States, and Margaret Thatcher became the prime minister of the UK. Both of them have been a great respect for the theoreticians of neoliberalism. Milton Friedman and Friedrich Hayek. Friedrich Hayek was a great economist coming from Austria and teaching in Chicago University. And Milton Friedman, he was also from Chicago and teaching there. And it is called somehow this current, the Chicago School. And basically when Reagan and Thatcher came to power, they simply decided to do in such a way that government should not interfere anymore in the economy. So a very simple act that they did was to liberate the price of airlines tickets, the price of airline tickets between New York and London. A very simple action. And maybe themselves could not imagine what is the impact of this decision. What was the intention of these two persons? That was simply to decide to liberate the market from the supervision and influence of the government, and to liberate the market in such a way that the price they believed should be fixed by the market itself without intervention and proposition or imposition of the market, of the government. So this simple action encouraged companies to operate internationally more and more. And that was the beginning of a very important event that we call international trade. So when we look at this picture, we see that there is a great movement in the world, international trade that everybody knows. And this is the trade between companies, countries, people, individuals. But when we see the picture, we notice that at the left, we have industry, light, science, and clock. These are the main and basic concepts that liberalism in general and modernity in general understands and use. But the other side is money. The other side is Asia. You can see the globe. You recognize Europe, Africa, and then Asia. And this means that trade is coming from the West, going to the East. So basically what happened is that when the companies in Europe and in North America decided to go for education, they wanted to invest, take the advantage, and somehow they stayed there. As you remember, when Donald Trump came to power, one of the first things he has been trying to do was to ask these companies, large companies, which established their representatives in Asia, to come back to the United States. Because during the globalization, they went to the East and they stayed in the East. So, as you remember, at the beginning, after the Second World War, as I said, United States has invested somehow $17 billion in Europe. And they wanted to help European countries to, for those countries to reconstruct their economy. Because Germany needed money, the country was destroyed because of the Second World War, and the United Kingdom needed money, and France as well. But some other countries used this money to help their economy. Basically, when the United States came to the game, this means international trade, they didn't want just to help and go away. They wanted to establish trade and commercial relations. That was the beginning of this stage, as I said. So that means that from the beginning, Americans wanted to establish connections, commercial connections with the world. And that was the first stage. And then we came to internationalization of capitalism, which was absolutely a great stage towards the internationalization of trade. And then we come to the fact, as I said, about the decision of Reagan and basically Margaret Thatcher. Now, here we see that the new school of thought is coming up. And as I said, the trade, which was basically all over the world, generalized and also internationalized, was handled by World Trade Organization, WTO. And WTO was, in fact, managing this situation. Because when we talk about globalization, we talk about two issues which are very important, even three. The first one, as I said, and this is about the minimizing as maximum as possible the intervention of government and state in the market. Market should be free, they said. And also that was the fact that if the trade is going everywhere, and if the trade should be liberated somehow, so the trade should be somehow, would not need anymore the barriers and somehow regulations. This means globalization goes with deregulation. Deregulation. This means removing all those barriers, principles, and also regulations which were considered before as really obstacles to develop trade internationally. So this is exactly what we call new liberalism. New liberalism, as I said, according to Friedman and according to Hayek, was based exactly by these two principles. The third one, as I said, was to leave the market to the private enterprises and private companies. Private companies should come, act, and should be considered as free actors without intervention of government, and should not have any specific barriers to do whatever they want. We are not anymore in terms of, limiting the freedom of these companies. So if you ask me, what is the sense of corruption? Sometimes we should say that it comes from the fact that there was too much freedom for these companies. And obviously, if there is no barrier, they could do whatever they wanted. So that was one of the issues of the period of globalization. So basically, globalization has maybe three aspects that we should talk about. The first one is that if we go again to this picture, yeah. So if you go again to this picture, we see that globalization, in fact, has a kind of sense from the West to the East. So globalization is not simply trade, but trade, international trade, with a sense, with a direction, political and geographical direction. Geographical direction from the West to the East. The companies from the West, they go to the East. The companies from the East, they never go to the West. And this is the first lesson regarding globalization. The other aspect is from the North to the South. From the North to the South. South has been considered as third world area. If we look at this picture, this is the South. South has been considered as we said, underdeveloped countries. And if we look at this picture, we see that China, India, Saudi Arabia, South Africa, North Africa, Latin America, and also Mexico, they have been considered as very poor countries in 60s and 70s. Progressively, coming to 80s, at the beginning of globalization, we noticed some movement. So northern countries, these are northern countries, basically Europe and North America, including United States and Canada, they invested to the south. This is a second direction of globalization, starting from 1980s. So starting from 1990s, also, That was the movement that we noticed, that northern countries, they go to the south. This means China was considered as poor country, starting from 1990, 2000, every single economist, political scientist, researcher, considered China as a superpower which is coming soon in the market. So from 2000, people said that in 2020, 2022, 2024, China would become the first superpower in terms of economy. Remember, superpower has three aspects. A superpower is a power with a political weight, economic weight, and ideological weight. But for China, they considered that China would become a superpower only in terms of economy. That was very important. Military is also another aspect of a superpower. So what happened is that the third aspect, the first aspect is the direction from the west to the east. The second aspect is the direction from north to the south. And the third aspect is the fact that the more people come from the west to the east, the more industry and investment is developed in Eastern and Asian and Southern countries, the more these countries become themselves knowledgeable about the new industry, They discover the secret of science, the secret of rational thought, the secret of new economy, the secret of liberalism, which was introduced as new liberalism, which is a bit different. Almost Adam Smith was talking about the fact that state should not intervene to the market and the market should be free. He never said that market should be absolutely without any barrier free. And he never said that government should not at all intervene. He always said a minimum intervention is necessary, Adam Smith said, and minimum regulations is necessary too. But neoliberalism said no state at all, and no barrier, and no regulations at all. So they were into maximizing the lessons of Adam Smith. That is why we call it as new liberalism school of thought in terms of economy. So basically what happened is that these countries in the East progressively discovered the secret of new science, new technology, and digitalization, and they started to develop more and more. So the third aspect of globalization, beside the two aspects regarding the direction from west to the east, north to the south, the third aspect is that Eastern countries, some African countries, especially South Africa, Northern countries, even within Africa, Central African countries started to develop, started to understand how they can develop their economy, their industry, progressively, obviously. From 2000, the world has changed. So, Asian countries, they started to organize different associations. As we can see, one of them, which is absolutely very important, is ASEAN. ASEAN has been created years ago before globalization, but they reinforced the energy for the economic development, social development after globalization. As we can see in this picture, there are countries like Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Singapore. These countries are more and more getting involved into international trade, world economy. And these countries, more and more, are getting involved in a kind of competition with the West. in 2010, from 2000 to 2010, we notice this development. Because not only the commercial business and enterprises have been developed in the Eastern countries, there have been also education. Harvard University started its branch, created its branch in China. So China was one of those major actors from 2000 in the world. So Chinese development is basically due to two factors. One, the huge efforts of the Chinese elites, because they saw that the best way to develop is to imitate the West and create something new. And this new creation was not only Chinese, that was a combination of Chinese traditional values and the modern science and modern technology. Exactly like Japanese they did. They did not become absolutely westernized as we can see in some other countries. They became a combination of two values. So China became a great power because of two issues, as I said. The first issue was the huge efforts of the elites of the society, and the second was due to the fact that China was, in fact, the outcome of the process of globalization. China understood how to imitate and get the best of this process for the development of its own country. We talk about the new energy, which has been, in fact, liberated after globalization in all these countries. China and Eastern Europe and some countries in Africa and Latin America, they were not anymore a laboratory of the Western countries. They became rival of the Western countries. And that was the issue of globalization. The balance of the world has been changed. The center of economy has been changed too. We cannot talk about one center of the world economy, which was considered before as New York, as a center of trade, as a center of economy. Today, we have different centers. Basically, we have three poles. One is in Asia, basically Southern Asia. The other one is Europe, and the third one is the United States and North America. So this is the variation and multiplicity of actors getting involved into economy. So the second part of my speech is about the coronavirus. I know this is short, and I try to summarize my speech and to specify on some important concepts. The question is, when coronavirus came, first, maybe economists, political scientists could not and did not. They were not prepared. They did not predict this phenomenon. When it came, nobody was ready to receive coronavirus. We are not maybe in the same situation anymore. The question is, what has been changed after coronavirus? This means after February 2002, or maybe after 2020, after February 2020, after March 2020, what happened in the world? Well, what happened was that many companies, they don't work anymore. Restaurants and cafes, they don't work anymore. Factories are closed. So basically for months and months, all of them has been closed. So 50% of companies in France were closed, and that created a huge economic crisis during just a few months. So let me just show you some of the pictures here which can help us to understand the situation a bit better. This is basically the collapse of the economic situation in the world because of coronavirus. And this picture shows also the situation, a kind of projection of economic situation after coronavirus. The impact of coronavirus is a very important matter. This is about the Asian countries, obviously. So what happened when we talk about coronavirus in terms of world economy? The first thing is, if we compare this with this situation with before coronavirus, as I said, before coronavirus, we were talking about, again, private companies which were handling the market, and state and government which were going back, and everything was handled by the market itself. But today, after coronavirus, governments are coming back. Private sector is slipping because they cannot act anymore. Coronavirus has affected the society and the economy in such a way, the only actor of the world economy became governments. Everywhere in the United States, in Canada, in France, Italy, in the United Kingdom, in Germany, only governments, they speak, they put money, they invest, they help society because of the number of huge amount of unemployment. Only in the United States, around 40 million people are unemployed. In Canada, in France, in Europe, basically, and other countries, in Eastern countries, the same situation came up. Who is going to help them? Private sector? At all. Private sector cannot act anymore. People do not work. Workers, they don't go to factories. So what happened is that government is coming back. Is it the same thing that we saw in the process of globalization? No. Many things had changed. So this is not anymore the same neoliberalism that we saw before, where in fact Hayek and Friedman, they were talking about this freedom of the market. Market is now supervised and even helped by the government. I refer to three events. I refer to three events to understand the situation much better. First, this situation we are living now is similar to 1929, when the first time in 1929, in fact, a huge crisis in the world has developed, affected all countries, including Europe and the United States and other countries in the world. In that situation, government came up and helped the countries. 1929 was right after this First World War, right before Hitler comes to power in 1933. The second event is right after the end of Second World War in 1945. In 1945, when the United States helped, following the Marshall Plan, as I said, with $17 billion, that money didn't go to private companies. That money didn't go to private sector. That money has not been given to those private or individuals. That money has been given to governments. The government of France, the government of the United Kingdom, and the government of Germany. Government invested, and government tried to help the situation to come up with a new economic construction. So that was the issue. And the third situation was the financial crisis of 2008. When Obama came to power, the first thing he did was to inject money to financial institutions in the United States. And other countries like Canada, they did the same. Because in the time of crisis, Basically, private sector does not have any more power to intervene. Only governments can do. That refers us to a new theory of economy, which is proposed before Second World War by John Keynes. Let me just come back to him. Yeah, John Keynes was thinking about the possibility of the intervention of government into the market. He was thinking that market by itself, especially in the time of crisis and even after crisis, should take care of the market, but not like a socialist system. No, he was not a socialist. He was even not communist. He was, because some people said he was, but he was not. He was a part of liberalism. And he was introducing, in fact, the new classical liberalism. Because we have classical liberalism, which is Adam Smith. We have new classical liberalism, which is John Keynes. And we have new liberalism, which is Hayek and Friedman, as I explained. So Keynes was thinking about the possibility to create such a situation that government would not leave the market, because in the market there are people who cannot manage to compete like others. Because in the market there are people who cannot manage to compete with great actors, great companies. The question in 1940, 1945 was how to deal with unemployment, how to deal with prices. Because recession is when the prices are coming up. This is the recession. The question was about the fact that how can we deal with a market which is absolutely destroyed? So Keynes came and said that liberalism is good, but government also is important to put some regulations. So deregulation of neoliberalism was basically rejected by Keynes, because Keynes thought that if we have in the market those group of people who are not powerful enough to compete with large companies, what do? They will be rejected by the society, by the market. Then that is not good, because we develop poverty in the society. And we don't know what will happen after. Remember, in 1917, we had a revolution in Russia. In 1920, in Germany, lots of movements against the capitalism developed in Germany. So the fact that Hitler came and said in 1930 and 33 that we should beat communists because communists was developing more and more in Germany. So that was the situation, political situation, that an economist was thinking about. He was thinking about to save the capitalism through a process of helping marginalized people, poor people, helping workers, in such a way workers will be more satisfied. Because he was thinking to save capitalism, because he was seeing how more and more contestations against the capitalism was developed. So Keynes basically was trying to maintain a kind of balance in the society, in the economy, to give a bit more to poor people and to restructure the capitalism. That is from that time that we have health insurance or, for example, education, free education in some countries. And even today, Keynes' theory of economy is very much accepted and developed in Northern Europe, in Sweden, in some other countries. Even in other countries are very much like in Canada and Australia. They are very much following that lesson of Keynes, that government should come back, government should be there, government should take care of marginalized people, and government should do something. Otherwise, if you leave the society without any kind of supervision, not too much, but somehow any kind of regulations, there will be Darwinism. And that is how some theoreticians talk about social Darwinism. What is social Darwinism? It comes from the theory of Darwin, which says that if you are powerful, then you achieve the goal and you don't take care of others. You don't take care of the poor. You don't take care of weaks. So you achieve the goal. But Keynes was saying that this is not enough to manage the society. When we see the society is poor people and rich people. We have to establish a kind of balance in such a way everybody takes a piece of the cake. So this situation, now we go back to the issue of coronavirus. This situation created a new concept in terms of economy, world economy, and that is how some people today talk about in fact. Yeah, talk about more and more about the situation of deglobalization. And deglobalization is the fact that basically we should change the attitude, we should change our approach to nature. The coronavirus somehow imposed us some new thoughts for human beings. Human being is now thinking about how neoliberalism was basically misusing the nature. Nature should be respected. Nature is with us, close to us, near, and we should think that we can use the nature, but we shouldn't abuse. So we should change our attitude, and that period of globalization was too much exaggerated. That was too much connected to a kind of materialism which was too exaggerated. So we should come back. We should rethink about our behavior and attitude towards the nature. Maybe we should change our view and we should respect more and more the nature. This is what coronavirus brought to the new economy. And also because of this coronavirus, trade has been affected a lot. Trade has been affected, and this situation of internationalization of trade has been stopped somehow. So that is the other aspect of coronavirus. In fact, coronavirus will put the world economy in a new situation where the trade was not as before facilitated. So transport was stopped. Now today it is going to restart, more or less in some countries, and this would somehow never ever quickly bring us to the previous situation. Never ever to the previous situation. We need years and years to reconstruct the previous situation. So coronavirus has affected the international trade. So I'm going to end this lecture. For those who are interested to read more, I can refer you to one of my books about the modernity without the West. It is in French, Modernité sans Occident. And also I can refer you to one of my papers about the globalization, a short study. This is an article that you can find easily in the market. And these are many other references and many other papers that you can read about globalization. Deglobalization is a new concept, and it has various aspects that I did not develop all of them. Time is limited. And people can also understand better if they read some papers about neoliberalism, about Hayek and Friedman, and also about the classical liberalism, John Keynes. So I think this is the end of our discussion, and I thank you very much.